This past spring, I was in Washington, D.C. doing a couple of pop-ups with some restaurants there, and I happened to link up with a particular restaurant group that is pretty notorious throughout the industry in the United States. Spearheaded by 3 different chefs from 3 different backgrounds connected through a love of food, it wasn't just their collective immense talent that got my admiration, but also the way they so obviously regarded each other as family. I don't think I miss being in a kitchen more than I did when I was watching these guys work together. This is the Fried Rice Collective of Washington, D.C., and these are 3 conversations I had with the chefs behind it. Okay, first off, let's just start off with what brought me to DC in the first place. Every now and then, the Fried Rice Collective will host a cookbook club, and this past spring, it just so happened to be that my cookbook was gonna be the one that was featured. We came up with a collaborative menu, taking elements from my cookbook and mixing it with items on their menus at their restaurants. A menu that was inspired by Korean, Chinese, Italian, and even Balinese cuisine. I spent most of the time filming and signing cookbooks, but also admiring their expertise in service, the artistry and thoughtfulness of their plating, but also admiring how smooth things were going. I was learning very quickly just why, when I had announced on Instagram that I was working with the Fried Rice Collective, that every person that I respected in food media would send me a message saying how much they loved these guys.
My name is Danny Lee. Well, our business partner Scott Drewno and I, we have a company called the Fried Rice Collective. Underneath that umbrella, we have Chaiko, stands for Chinese Korean. We have 5 of those. We have Anju, and we have Aegyu, which is where we're here now. We also run a pretty extensive catering program called District Catering. And then separately, my mom and I, we started in DC actually in 2006 with a restaurant called Mandu.
So Mandu was the first one, and then from that you grew this.
Yeah, so Mandu opened in 2006, and even though it doesn't seem that long ago,
Yeah.
we were DC's first full-service Korean restaurant.
2006 was
Yeah.
the first. Was DC's.
There were Korean
first-
restaurants in the past,
Yeah.
but they always felt the need to have like a sushi bar attached to it, right?
That was an era, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Almost even Chinese restaurants, they had like a sushi counter.
Thai
on it.
restaurant.
Yes.
Because sushi had been around in the US for so long that was almost like the entry point for any other Asian cuisine to really gain hold.
Yeah.
Right, to like get a footing down, was to like at least have something that was Asian but like familiar. But in terms of kind of the Asian realm of cuisine in the US, Korean food's relatively new.
What did you guys specialize in?
We like to call it home style Korean cooking. So it's different, right? So it's food that you expect when you go to someone's house and their grandma is cooking for you. When we first started, my sister and I basically thought back to when we were kids and what were our favorite Korean dishes our mother would cook for us. And when we opened, my mom and I were the chefs,
Yeah.
and then we grew to 2 locations. And then in 2017, I wanted to do something different outside of the family. And also, like, we had, in a way, pigeonholed ourselves with Mandu by serving, like, home-style Korean cuisine.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get a little bit more creative and explore kind of, like, the culinary creativity of what Korean food and ingredients and recipes could be.
Right.
And one of my best friends was Scott Drewno, and he was running a very great restaurant here called The Source, and he specializes in Chinese cuisine. And we became fast friends over the years, and respect each other's work ethic, respect each other's talent, palate, everything. So we decided to partner up. Could have been more creative with the name, but we ended up doing Chaiko as the first concept. Chai for Chinese, Ko for Korean. And we wanted to
works.
Yeah, But instead of, so there is a genre of cuisine called Chinese Korean, right? Which is like jjajangmyeon and jjampong and ttangsu육.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So a lot of people when we first opened thought that that's what we'd be.
Yeah.
Where what we wanted to do was have one restaurant where half the menu was kind of our twist on Chinese cuisine, the other half the menu is our twist on Korean cuisine, but done in a very fast-paced, energetic environment. So it's not fast casual, it's not full service, it's kind of in between.
Yeah.
Right? The day we opened up the first Chaiko, the original Mandu burnt down. We had an electrical fire there. So it's a crazy day. So I woke up at 3 a.m. to all these calls. If you were like, your restaurant's on fire, I was like, what?
When did Mandu reopen then?
So Mandu, we had a second Mandu, which is still now I'm only Mandu.
Okay.
But that day when we had the fire, I'm literally prepping at Chaiko, and I had my phone on speaker next to the cutting board, and I was dealing with an insurance company, and I needed to make a decision right then.
Yeah.
And the two options were walk away try to get some money back and do whatever you want, or we can get you more money if you choose to reopen the restaurant. And it was at that point I talked to Scott, my business partner, and I was like, because I always had the idea of Anju in my head. And I was like, oh, this would be a great opportunity for us to bring my original location into the company fold, and let's do Anju as a group together.
So Anju is where Mandu used
The original
to be?
Mandu was.
So literally, like from the ashes, you have this restaurant, and Anju is the one that has so much acclaim.
Yeah.
Is being represented at. See you guys next week at TAF.
Yeah. Back when Scott was the chef and partner at the Source, throughout the years, I would eat there all the time. It was my favorite restaurant. And I started to see, some Korean, bits of flair here and there. And Scott was saying that he had a sous chef named Angel who loved Korean cuisine, grew up in a military family, spent some time in Korea when he was younger. And so I met Angel and we started talking a lot. And then when the fire happened, Scott and I approached Angel. We're like, hey, we're thinking about doing this concept Anju. Would you like to be the chef of it? And he was just like 100%.
How would you describe the food at Anju?
The food at Anju is Korean. A lot of people like to label it as being like, progressive or modern, Korean. I think it's still a Korean restaurant.
Yeah, it's very interesting when people try to attach like words like progressive or modern or contemporary stuff, where it's like, I feel like that just means that their image of a cuisine in their head is just static.
But this happens with specifically Asian cuisine.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
So if you look at Western cuisine, it's French, Italian, Spanish cooking. All of those cuisines have been allowed to progress and evolve.
Yeah.
They're still called Spanish, they're still called French, they're still called Italian.
Yeah, nobody's called, like the French people are using uni in their dishes. Like nobody's calling that like contemporary French. Right.
But for Asian cuisine, it's modern Vietnamese, or it's fusion, or it's this, and it's just like, why?
Yeah.
Why are we not allowing these cuisines? And sometimes it happens within our own community, of not allowing our cuisines to evolve the way other cuisines have.
Yeah, I mean, like tastes change, ingredients change, access changes. It's like a natural thing for like, and like, as generations go on, it's like people's interests. But there's still at that core, it's still going to be Korean food. It's still going to be Chinese.
Yeah, and like there are, there's not one way to make kimchi. Right?
Yeah.
There's not one way, to do ferments. And also, if you look at the agriculture in Korea and what's available in the States, very different.
Yeah.
Right. There's some ingredients that just aren't here natively. Right. So.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the fun thing for us as chefs, also, cooking Korean food in the States, is utilizing the produce that's available to us, regionally and nationally, and seeing what we can do. Can we make a kimchi out of this, or can we do, a namu, right? Like a seasoned vegetable, panchan, out of these ingredients, because these are available here and they're not available in Korea. Again, like you said, vice versa. Because we're doing that, it's still rooted in heritage. It's still rooted in authentic recipes.
Yeah.
Right. History.
It's a matter of identity. It's not something that people can take away from you. Ever.
And I just don't, and I will always defend that, right? Because I can't see why you can call that anything other than Korean.
4 o'clock in the morning, what is your order?
Chinese style wok fried whole chicken wings.
Okay, yeah.
That are on top of crinkle cut fries.
The one with like the no breading. It's the the puffy. Oh my gosh.
It's so good, and it's like a little bit of white pepper in the seasoning, and just frozen. They always, for some reason, it's always frozen crinkle cuts, right? As a base,
it's
and
probably
then
the easiest.
And then you just like pack the container. Tie the plastic bag super tight, so like the fries end up like getting soggy, but it's like this like weirdly delicious like sog on the fry.
It is okay. So I totally know what you mean, because like there is like the sad soggy fry, but then like once it like reaches, it's almost like when you're braising meat in a way. Like once it gets past the point when then it was like just wet with sauce in its own. Like,
and its own like potato grease. It's delicious.
Oh my God! Thank you so much. That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One of the nights after the pop-up, I did end up making it to Anju for dinner. And I just want to point out that Washington, D.C. is a city of Michelin stars. There are quite a few restaurants there that have 1 or 2 stars, and on the outskirts, I believe there is one that has 3. And I found that it was very interesting to note that whenever I asked a local person in that city for a restaurant recommendation, nobody would mention a starred restaurant, but almost everybody talked about this place. Chef Angel was kind enough to portion everything out into a tasting menu format, so I was almost able to try everything that was on their menu. And I'm so glad that that is how that worked out, because when I tell you, everything was such a f***ing banger. That fried fish and this ice cream sundae shall haunt me for the rest of my days.
It's 4 a.m. in any context that you're normally up at 4 a.m. What are you eating?
Ramen. Yeah.
Yeah. Like out of the packet?
Shin ramen black.
Hell yeah.
It's my favorite, yeah.
Okay. Do you do anything with it, or is that?
No, when it's that late, normally I have like bone broth.
Yeah.
So I normally do a bone broth to like jazz it up with some scallions.
That's
it.
That's really jazzed
Yeah.
up, though. Amazing.
I'm Angel Barreto. I'm the executive chef of Anju in DC. I never thought I wanted to be a chef. I always loved food and the idea of cooking. I actually studied international relations. So I went to George Mason, studied international relations. I thought that was what I was going to do, but I quickly realized once I did my first externship, I hated it. I hated being in the office. I hated like the coldness of it.
Yeah.
So I decided to go to culinary school. So I went to a French school called Academy of Cuisine. My parents were not happy because I left college. I studied French food, and I knew I didn't want to cook French food. So I used that as a baseline to get to where I wanted to be. So I worked at a modern American restaurant. Then I was at Wolfgang Puck for over 6 years. I mean, I lived on a military base for most of my life.
Okay.
So we were always surrounded by Korean ingredients.
Yeah.
You know, we had neighbors and friends who were Korean. So I always grew up eating Korean food. So it was not something I didn't think was weird. It was just normal. And my mom cooked Korean dishes at home also.
Yeah. When did you start cooking it here?
So I started cooking with their company 7 years ago. But
Okay.
I worked with Scott at The Source. Before they founded Chico, Scott was the chef over at Wolfgang Puck The Source. So that's how we all kind of know each other.
Okay.
So Danny knows Scott through coming to The Source.
Yeah.
And they would hang out all the time. They became good friends. And I began to know Danny through him coming to The Source also.
Yeah.
Because I was a cook and worked myself up to sous chef.
Nice.
All the way up to executive sous, excuse me. And so I was there for a while. That's how we all kind of know each other. Because Scott was my chef.
What was the first thing that you learned how to make when you were like doing Korean
Ferments.
food? Ferments.
Ferments is like for me was like what I really wanted to learn, because I always grew up, you know, going to my friend's mom's house and they would have kimchi and trying it. So when I went and started making my own kimchi on a big scale, I started at The Source, and I would do like 100 pounds of kimchi and letting it ferment for 3 months. You know,
Where?
at the restaurant.
Okay.
And then I was able to put on a Korean tasting menu. And so we started doing Korean dishes at Wolfgang Puck. And so we did like a 12-course Korean tasting menu.
It must have been great to have like all the resources of a restaurant group like that.
Oh, it's great. It was like a kid in a candy store,
Yeah,
especially
yeah,
there because
yeah.
like we didn't have to worry about cost of anything. So if
Right.
I really wanted to get something or buy plates, we could do it.
And it was like curiosity and internationality is like ingrained in like the
Yeah, and I
Wolfgang
mean, especially
Puck.
when you're young too, it's
Yeah.
like you have like tenacity and you just want to learn everything. And I was just reading every book and trying to find every resource I could get. And I still try to do that to this day. It's like because the breadth of knowledge is like you can never end it, you know, because there's so much complexity, especially with Korean food.
Yeah.
You think about kimchi, because everyone knows how one type of kimchi.
Yeah.
There's over
So
35 different regional types of kimchi in Korea. You know.
Yeah.
Kimchi from Seoul is different from kimchi in Daegu from all across. It's really, really interesting. You go to Busan, they put fresh oysters and squid and
Yeah.
jujubes and pine nuts. There's a world-style kimchi with over 100 ingredients. Like, it can be very, very complex. It's not just like what we think it is here in the United States.
The morning before my flight to New York, I decided to stop by Aegu. When I was doing research on the Fried Rice Collective, this was actually the first menu that I took a look at, and I was immediately smitten by it. A lot of cooks will consider the egg to be the perfect ingredient, the perfect food, and the egg sandwich to be the perfect vehicle for it. And their egg sandwiches just happen to be what this place was especially known for. But also, do not skip on the stuffed French toast because you do yourself a massive disservice if you do not have one. In my opinion, brunch menus tend to be one of two things. The first being a recycling of ingredients and leftovers and repurposing them into a breakfast format for the sake of improving your profit margins. The second, which is the case for Aegu, is an understanding of the core concept as well as our expectations of breakfast, and then being as creative and playful as you possibly can with it, and maybe even a little chaotic. There was something to love in everything that I had here, and I was surprised by everything that I thought I would only just like. And it's those surprises is what I love most about experiencing another person's food.
Scott Drewno, chef owner of the Fried Rice Collective. I spent 17 years working for Wolfgang Puck all over the place, Vegas, helped open restaurants around the world, and moved here and opened The Source in the museum building. Became fast friends with Danny right after I moved to town. I did mostly fine dining my whole life and wanted to do something more casual.
And when I first started working for Wolfgang, I worked at a restaurant called Chinois. Just fell in love with the wok, Chinese cabinet steamer, ginger, like things that we kind of take for granted now, but this is 25 years ago,
right?
30 years ago.
Was that the place where like Asian fusion was like widely regarded to have started?
Yeah, so that was basically Wolfgang's idea. Was he's a classically trained French chef. He had taken a trip to Asia, fell in love with the ingredients. So his idea was to take Asian ingredients and meld them with French cooking techniques, and Chinois was born.
What is a dish that you like to cook?
Anything on the wok. I mean, I love the cumin lamb noodles.
Cumin lamb noodles,
You have to try it.
Yes.
It's definitely one of my favorites. Again, a little bit different preparation. We use lamb necks for it, which I was very scared that like no one was going to order it. And it's like one of the top sellers every month. It has been for years.
Was your fear based more on the fact of the palate of DC?
It's not like it's eating a lamb chop or another more common cut, but we really love the texture of lamb necks, and we marinated them overnight in Maggi and a bunch of cumin and garlic, and we slow cook those overnight. So that's like the best thing. Like every Chico store you walk into, at some point during the day, we're pulling out a pan of like slow cooked lamb necks, and it's just falling off the bone and the smell, and there's a lot of good unctuous fat in the necks, so it kind of crisps up really nice in the wok. It just happens that's been a big seller for us. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Where did the desire to open I Egg You come from, or where did the idea? Because this is the newest one.
Honestly, I worked for somebody else for 17 years and felt like a bit of a caged animal a little bit. Like I have all these concepts, all these ideas I've always wanted to do. And, when you work for somebody else, there's pros and cons to that. I wouldn't change the path because I learned a lot. But, I have these ideas. So I always wanted to do a fried egg sandwich concept. And pandemic hit, and, at that time we were like, it was hard, to manage, to motivate the team, to motivate ourselves. We were afraid. There was unknown. There was so many variables happening, and I wanted something for all of us to focus on that was positive. And so, the joy of opening a restaurant and the birth of a concept is, every time we've done it, it's joyful. It's fun. It gets creative juices flowing. It's focusing on something that is positive instead of worrying about something that's negative. So I was like, hey, let's try this fried egg sandwich concept. We'll just do it as a pop-up out of Chico. We were selling like 250 sandwiches every Saturday and 250 every Sunday, just takeout and delivery for 4 hours. The neighborhood was also excited. So we have so many great guests. We've been in this neighborhood for a long time. And they were really excited. They're like, oh, there's something new in the pandemic, that we can get takeout and delivery. And then after like 2 years, I was like, it's going to die down. It's going to die down. It's never died down. And so our landlord, who is our landlord at Chico, also is our landlord here. And he called. He's like, hey, I think that fried egg sandwich deserves a home.
Till 4 o'clock in the morning, for whatever reason that you're up at 4 o'clock in the morning, what is your order?
I mean, same as like a desert island, it would be a pork dumpling for sure.
Very nice.
Yeah, that's my go-to.
Good answers.
Anytime,
Good answers.
anywhere.